Hi, uh, welcome to Hello Computer, writing Ruby with voice recognition. So before I begin, I'd like to give a small content warning. There's going to be some medical stuff in this presentation. I'll tell you when I'm about to get to the part with a diagram. There's going to be one slide with a diagram of the anatomy of a hand. It's not super gross or anything, but I understand it might be a problem for some people. I will not be offended if you want to drop out and come back or anything like that. Most of the medical stuff is up at the top of the presentation. Um, so I will get into the coding demo part of it about 5 to 8 minutes in. So anyway, hi, my name is Nat Budin. I work at ActBlue Technical Services, and we are hiring. We are a remote-first organization, but the main office is in the Boston area. Happy to chat about that if you're interested. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, my handle there is Nat Budin as well. So just a little bit of context before I go into the main presentation. I don't code by voice full-time anymore. I was doing it for a period of a few months while I was recovering from an injury. And as such, I'm not really an expert in this software. I don't have to use it full time, and I haven't developed the level of expertise that somebody who does would have. And there's a lot of people who are much better at this than me. And I'm very privileged as far as voice coders go. I speak so-called Middle American US English, and that certainly helps with the voice recognition engine understanding me. And I don't have the kind of medical issues that would require me to use voice recognition full time. So I feel very lucky about that, and the fact that I've been able to mostly recover from my hand injury that I'm going to be talking about. So speaking of my hand injury, here's how I got into voice coding. So the story kind of begins in August of 2020. This is a vacation photo from when I was camping with my partner in Central Washington. And what you see in the background of us is Sun Lakes Dry Falls State Park in Central Washington. And it actually used to be the biggest waterfall in the world. And when I say used to be, I mean in the Ice Age. And it's long since dried up, but you can kind of see the remnants of where the waterfall used to be. It's this just huge cliff. And you can camp right in the basin of that cliff. It's very beautiful. I highly recommend it if you're ever out that way. One of my favorite spots. And while we were there, we were driving around various parts of the state, and I started to feel some pain in my right index finger. And I couldn't really pin it down. I couldn't really figure out what exactly was causing the pain, what kind of movements were making it happen. And it didn't seem to happen in the same place on my hand every time. So I just kind of ignored it. I figured this is, I'm aging, I'm getting past 35 at this point, and it's probably going to be fine. I'll just ignore it. It did not get better. So I did what anybody else would do in this situation, I imagine, and I tried to self-diagnose my finger on Google. And I heard about various medical conditions that I might or might not have. De Quervain's tenosynovitis, I think, was one of them. Spoiler alert, it wasn't that, but that's what I thought it was for a while. And so when you've self-diagnosed on Google, the next step, of course, is to self-treat using Amazon. And so this is actually a device that I bought. This is, in fact, you can see this is my Amazon account, and it's showing last purchased on September 9th of 2020. So this is a finger splint that I wore 24/7 for about 10 days straight. And I tried to work with it on, and it was supposed to help by not allowing your finger to bend, and thereby relieving whatever was causing the problem. And at the end of those 10 days, I felt worse. And finally, I realized that my work's health plan at the time included a telemedicine option because we were in the thick of the pandemic. I really, really didn't want to go see a doctor. This was, of course, before vaccines were available. And so I finally saw someone on telemedicine, and she said, one, stop wearing that thing. It is making it worse. You're not supposed to wear that kind of splint 24 hours. If you do wear it at all, which might not even be the right thing for your case, you should only really wear it at night. And so I shouldn't have really been wearing it in the first place anyway. And also, she said, you should really go see a hand specialist. And I'm about to show you a diagram of what was actually going on in my finger. So just if you need to not see that diagram, now would be a good time to drop and come back. So here's what the hand specialist finally told me. He said, well, you have a trigger finger. So the way this works is that there's a tendon running through your finger and actually all the way down your arm, all the way out almost to the shoulder, which is the flexor tendon. That's what's shown in this diagram. And when you bend your finger, it acts like a rope attached to a pulley, and the muscles pull the tendon back. And the tendon's supposed to glide across this thing, which is literally called a pulley. It's the red part in the diagram. And there's many of these, but this is the one that was inflamed in my case. Because the pulley, like every part of your body, is made of flesh, and it can get inflamed and swell up. And what happens when you have a trigger finger is that this particular pulley swells up, and your finger tendon, your flexor tendon rather, can't glide through it smoothly anymore. And so that can, at first, it will cause pain, and it can happen anywhere in your finger. The pain can appear to be coming from anywhere because there's nerves running all over your hand, and the pain could be referred all kinds of places, which is why I couldn't really pin it down. And but it's all really down to this one spot. And so the hand specialist gave me an injection to this one place on my hand with cortisone, and that worked fairly immediately. I started to really feel better within a few days, and within a few weeks of that, I was starting to feel like 75% better. And I still had some physical therapy to do after that to get to 100%, which I eventually did. And this whole thing took months to fully work, and I still wanted to be able to do my job at the time. And I tried all kinds of things like coding with one hand, which was very frustrating, or trying to code without using my index finger, which really didn't help. It really just kind of made things worse, honestly, by putting my right hand into awkward positions. And I remembered this talk that I'd heard about but never watched from the Perl conference in 2019 in Pittsburgh that my friend Amy Newell had told me about. And the talk is by someone named Emily Shea. And she has to use voice recognition to code pretty much full time, which she does. Because she has severe arthritis, and she's really not able to use a keyboard pretty much at all. And so in this talk, she demoed a piece of software that I decided I would like to try out and see how it goes. And so what I'm going to show you is that piece of software. It's called Talon. Talon is a customizable system for desktop voice recognition. And what I mean by that is that it doesn't just type out whatever you say to it. It actually recognizes commands, and it doesn't have any built-in commands. You actually use one of the community repositories of commands that are written in scripting languages. It's very, very customizable. It can use various voice recognition engines. For example, it can use Dragon Naturally Speaking, which you may have heard of, but these days it ships its own voice recognition model called Conformer, and Conformer is amazing. It's really the best voice recognition I've ever seen in my life, bar none. It almost feels like magic, and I'll show you that a bit later. Talon is built for programmers by a programmer. All of its behaviors are user-defined. So I talked about those community repositories of scripts. Most people these days use one called NousJ after the guy who made it. And it's not just him writing those scripts. It's actually a lot of people contributing at this point to a GitHub repository. Talon itself is not open source. It's Patreon funded. And if you pay $25 a month or more, you get access to the beta version of Talon, and you get access to the beta versions of the voice recognition engine, which is even better than the publicly available version. The publicly available version is still quite good, but it does feel nice also to help fund the development of this by this one guy named Ryan. It's his full-time job, and he's been doing amazing work on this thing, honestly. So I feel good to fund him. So without further ado, I'd like to demo this thing. So I'm just going to say some words with Talon. So let me move over to my editor here. And then I'll say, Talon wake. Say, now Talon is active. Enter. Go up. Go word right. Clear word right. Space. Say Talon. go down. Say, you can see that there are a bunch of commands for editing text. Enter. Say, it doesn't always get it right immediately. Enter. Say, but actually it's quite good most of the time. Escape. Talon sleep. So that's kind of the basics of speaking to Talon. And you might say, well, that's fine. That, works pretty well for editing text, but I'm a programmer. I say things, or I need to type things in weird ways and spell things in weird ways for whatever programming language I'm using at the time. So the default commands in NousJ also have a bunch of prefixes you can say. So if you say snake say some words, it will type out say some words with underscores between them in all lowercase. Or camel say some words, which will type them out in camel case. A lot of these things. And I often forget which prefix I'm supposed to say, honestly, because I switch a lot between Ruby and JavaScript in my work. And obviously, I'm using different variable naming conventions in both languages, and I'm using different variable naming conventions even within one language, too. So my favorite command out of all of these is nope, that was camel, or nope, that was snake, or any of those things, which deletes the last thing I said and reformats it as the formatter I actually meant to say. It's actually quite forgiving in that way. And you saw me use a bunch of editing commands too. You can say go up, go down, go left, go right, which will just move the cursor around. You can jump by words, you can delete by words, clear lines. There's the shortcuts lend and bend for line end and line begin. Slap is pretty cool. If you're used to VI, for example, you might know this as pressing the character O, which inserts a new line below this one, and it doesn't matter where your cursor is in the current line. It will just start a new line below this one and move the cursor down onto it. Talon can also, in a lot of cases, detect what language you're programming in, and the way it does that is by using the accessibility features of your computer to look at what window is focused and look at what the title bar of that window says. So if it sees something that ends in .rb, it will activate Ruby mode as long as that's true. So in Ruby mode, I have additional prefixes available to me like instance, which will allow me to say loaded records, for example. And if I say instance loaded records, it will insert an @ sign followed by loaded records with underscores. So that's really handy for when you're working in Rails controllers or working with objects, anything like that. If I'm in JavaScript, my favorite command in JavaScript mode is block, which inserts two curly braces with an empty line separating them and then places the cursor in between those two braces. So really handy. I wish I had a key to do it on the keyboard, honestly. Talon also has an alphabet. Sometimes it just doesn't know the word you're trying to say at all. It comes with an English dictionary, but a lot of the time we're saying things that are abbreviated, or we're saying things that are just not in the dictionary for whatever reason. So it has an alphabet where you can speak out letters to it. And, the Talon alphabet song, which we all have to learn when we're starting learning this thing: air, bat, cap, drum, each fine gust, harp, sit, jury, crunch, look made near, etc. And you might wonder, why is this not using the NATO phonetic alphabet? Which is to say Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, etc. And the reason for that is that they wanted to make an alphabet where each letter is one syllable as much as possible. And it's almost true in this alphabet. Jury is two syllables, but everything else is one syllable. And it certainly does pay to try and learn this alphabet when you start out with Talon. There's some cool online tools to help practice that as well. But if you can't remember it, you can use the online help, which I'd like to show you now. So Talon Wake, help alphabet, help close, help active, help 15, help return, help next, help 7, help close, Talon sleep. So I didn't want to say a lot of extra commands while I was doing that, because who knows what Talon would think I was trying to do. But basically what you saw me do is open and close the alphabet help. I often leave that open while I'm working if I can't remember the whole alphabet in my head, which is often with this stuff. And it will just float above whatever else I'm doing on the screen. And there's also this online help, which is context sensitive. So when you say help active, it actually brings up a menu of all the active contexts, and there would have been more of them if I were in my editor at the time. So that would bring up commands for like text editing and whatever language I'm working with. It knows about all of them. There's also, if you need to debug why Talon is not understanding something you're saying, there's this cool command history mode. So let me show you that for a sec. Talon wake, command history, Talon sleep. So you can actually see that there's a command history window, and it's listening not only for when Talon is awake, but it's also listening for when it's asleep. So everything that I'm saying now shows up in that command history window. And if you're paying attention to what's in the window right now, you can see that I actually did a retake. Hopefully RubyConf is editing this well so that you can't notice it until I point it out. I'm sure they'll do a great job. Command history, Talon wake, command history, Talon sleep. Okay. So for my next trick, I would like to copy out some actual Ruby code to show kind of what it's like to use this thing. And this is real life code. I copied this. This isn't from the application I work on at work because that would be proprietary code, but this is from an application I work on as an open source project. And it's part of the application controller in that Rails app, which rescues authorization errors from Pundit. So without further ado, I'd like to show you what it's like to actually write out that code with Talon. So Talon wake, snake rescue from, space, hammer Pundit, colon twice, hammer not authorized error, space, state do, argpipe, say error, slap, hammer rails, dotted logger warn, paren, go left third, clear right, air, lend, go left, dotted error message, slap, state if, snake user signed in, question, slap, snake redirect to, space, snake root URL, comma, space, word alert, colon, space, dotted error message, slap, state else, slap, go up, tab twice, delete, word session, square, colon, snake user return to, nope that, snake user return to, lend, space equals space, dotted request URL, slap, go up, lend, clear word left, urge red look, escape, go down, tab, snake redirect to, space, snake root URL, nope that, snake root URL, paren, snake show authentication, colon, snake, delete, space, quote, camel sign in, slap, state end, slap state end, nope that, state end, slap, state end, escape, Talon sleep. So I don't think I made that look easy, let's be real, but I think, I hope I made it look possible. This is someone who's very out of practice with Talon trying to remember all the editing commands, but there was a time when I was more in practice than this after a few months of using it. And from what I hear, people who use this full time can actually get good enough that they're faster than they were with the keyboard in about 6 months of using it. I won't lie, the first couple of weeks are pretty frustrating, but once you start getting used to it, it actually becomes kind of addicting, and it becomes like a puzzle to figure out how to get it to say the things you want. So on that note, some tips for trying out Talon without getting too frustrated. So my first thing that I wish I'd known at the beginning is don't try to do everything with Talon at first. Even when I was using it pretty much full time, I was still using a trackpad one-handed. There is no shame in not controlling your entire computer with Talon. This is an adaptive technology, so you should use it in the way that adapts to your needs. If you have one hand that hurts, like I did, and one hand that doesn't hurt, it is fine to use the other hand. You can control your whole computer using Talon, but if you don't have to and you don't want to, and you're just learning Talon, there's really no shame in it. And like even if you're typing 50% of the time and using Talon 50% of the time, you're still relieving the RSI in your finger. If you're not getting good results at first, try using a better microphone. This is thankfully less true than it used to be. The old model before Conformer was very picky about audio quality. And you can see I'm using this Shure SM58 attached to a USB audio interface. It's honestly probably not super necessary at this point. But it certainly was necessary when I started on the old model. And I had the mic laying around from home audio recording stuff anyway, so I did use it. A lot of people use the Blue Yeti microphone, which is a USB mic often used by podcasters. So that can get really good results. But honestly, with the new voice recognition model, you can sometimes get good results with just the laptop built into, just the mic built into your laptop if it's good enough. So if you're not getting great results, a better microphone might help, but it might not be necessary either. There's also a way with the Nouse.j repository of scripts. There's a way to add custom vocabulary to Talon, and this is really useful. I work in payment processing technology, so I'm often saying words like auth, which is not in the English dictionary that Talon ships with. So there's a CSV file that ships with Nouse.j, and if you add words to it, they'll actually take precedence over the words in the dictionary. So I can say auth, and it won't recognize it as auth anymore. It will type out AUTH just the way I want. Similarly, I added the word GraphQL to the custom vocabulary, and it now recognizes that. So very handy. I didn't know about it for the first couple months, and I was spelling out a lot of words. There's also a community Slack full of really helpful, really dedicated people, including the creator of the app, and it's free to join. You can join from the Talon website. And that's really, really helpful, especially if you're just starting out and trying to learn things. Before I end, I'd like to say a few words about accessibility in general, and how this whole experience has changed my perspective on it. Accessibility is not just for end users. We tend to think, especially in the web applications line of work, we tend to think of accessibility in terms of visual accessibility a lot. We tend to think of accessibility as something that we do for the people using our websites, and that's a good thing. We should be thinking about making our websites accessible. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but accessibility is also for us. We are also computer users. In fact, we're very heavy computer users. There's a podcast I listen to, the Accidental Tech Podcast, and in episode 415 of that podcast, John Siracusa says, accessibility is for everyone, including you if you live long enough, and personally, I hope to live long enough to need accessibility more. And accessibility is not just about screen reader users either. We think about visual accessibility a lot, and again, we should think about that. Screen readers are an important part of accessibility for websites, for apps, etc. But there's other types of accessibility, including accessibility to keyboard navigation, which is really important when you're using something like Talon that mostly works by inputting keyboard commands on your behalf. And so you can really notice when you're on a web page that isn't keyboard accessible and you're trying to navigate it using Talon, it is a pain. And it really is kind of an eye-opener. I definitely recommend trying it sometime to try to navigate a website without using a mouse and see how it works. Code formatters can be an accessibility tool as well. I'm talking here about stuff like Prettier or the upcoming Ruby format. Um, and this stuff can be really helpful if you're coding by voice in your editor and you don't want to have to worry about getting the formatting exactly right. I have mine set up to auto-format my code when I save the file. So every time I save, it will just reformat whatever I just typed into the style preferred in the project that I'm using. And this is great because I don't have to worry too much. I can write really ugly looking code with like lines that are 500 characters long just because I didn't feel like saying enter and tab a lot. And then it will just fix it for me. So that is really, really helpful. And I do have a slight hot take here as my last thought about accessibility before the next slide, which is please don't abbreviate variable names. If you're writing something, if you're using an instance variable in a controller, for example, called transaction, I would much rather actually see the word transaction typed out just as a reader of the code, honestly. It's cognitively easier to process the word transaction than TXN. But as a voice coding user, it is awful to have to spell out this stuff every time. And it's just much more usable if we can actually use regular words for variable names. So that's my hot take for this slide. But there's one more thing I want to say about accessibility that is so important I gave it its own slide in big letters, and that is listen to your body. So going back to how I got my finger injury. So I said that I was on a camping trip. So on that camping trip, I decided it would be a fun idea as I was going to sleep every night in the camp in the tent. On the camping pad, I was lying there and I was like, it'd be cool to be able to play a video game on my phone as I'm falling asleep. So let's see, I'll just load up Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney on my phone and play it like this. And at the time I was using a much larger phone and I have small hands. So I'm pretty sure the size of the phone also contributed to the injury, but I was trying to like tap things on the screen one-handed while holding the phone above my head. It was very awkward. And after a while, it started to really hurt. And so what did I do? I was like, well, I'm young, I'm invincible. I'm just going to keep doing this. And I would play the game until I fell asleep, and then the next night I would do it again, and it would hurt more and more. And I thought nothing of it, and I really didn't think that it was connected to the pain that I was feeling while driving. So, it's moral of the story is if something hurts, I recommend thinking about it and maybe doing it in a different way or not doing it as much. Don't be like me and give yourself a trigger finger while trying to play Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney in a camping pad. So with that, thank you very much. Here's a few resources if you want to get started using Talon. The website, as well as the talk that I watched to teach myself about Talon the first time. A lot of the stuff in there is not as up to date at this point, but it's still really great for watching an expert use the software as opposed to me. There's also a great YouTube channel full of demos of individual things that you might want to try using Talon by someone named Tara Royce. So I found those really helpful when learning as well. So thank you very much, and I'll be on Discord if you have any questions.